Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Collective Clicks podcast. This is your host, Brandon Bateman, and today I'm going to be joined by David Richter. David owns Simple CFO, a company that works with over 160 real estate investors with fractional CFO services. David has seen all the finances, he's seen the pros, he's seen the cons, he's even run an investment company doing 25 deals a month and not making any money. He talks about all the lessons he's learned through all of this, eventually writing the book Profit First for real estate investors. I asked David a ton of cool questions like, what is profit first? How can you incorporate it in your company? What is a normal net margin or a normal percentage marketing expense for a wholesale company versus a fix and flip company? So we could talk about all those different things to help you know if your company is healthy or not and get some actionable first steps to become more healthy from a financial perspective. How are you doing today, David?
I'm doing great, Brandon. It's great to be here.
Yes, I am. I'm honored to be here as well. Feels like we've been spending more than a little time together recently.
Yes.
We're just hanging out in Tampa for 3 days at Family Mastermind, so that's always a good time.
Yes, it is, and it's been awesome. It just had you on our podcast too, so I like that I'm getting to see you more and more. So just got to keep the masterminds flowing and going to them.
Yes. Do you, out of curiosity, how much do you end up traveling to different masterminds and stuff like that?
Last year was crazy. Last year I just launched my book, and so I got asked to speak at a lot of different things. So last year I was traveling at least once or twice a week almost.
Wow.
I think I did over 40 in-person events last year, so maybe a little less than a week. But some weeks, I remember one week last year, I went to 4 different places in 5 days, like in planes. And I never want to do that again. This year has been a lot better. That last year was about getting the word out. This has been more like, okay, these are the things I really want to go to. So I at least go to 3 masterminds a quarter. So that's still traveling 3 times every single quarter. Then I usually do some speaking engagement, things like that. So it ends up to be maybe every other week. This year, maybe it'll be 20 things this year versus 40 as of last year, which this, honestly, it felt better to me. This last weekend was nuts. I was 3 different places, literally from Florida to Washington State, Columbus, Ohio, then back to Tampa. And so 3 different places in the matter of 5 days. But besides that, travel this year hasn't been as bad.
Well, that all sounds pretty bad to me. I'm more of like a once a month travel kind of guy. A lot of people think that's a lot.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that's insane.
Yeah, and I do not love travel either. I don't love being up in the airplane. That's why what I'm doing, I really do view as the mission. Like, this is the mission that God has put me on this earth for, and like, I need to get this message out. And I've had frank talks with my wife and my daughter, and getting them involved, which makes it to where I at least don't feel the burden of I'm really letting them down or I'm not spending time with them, because I've also had them say, when you're here at home. So I'm like, I at least have that going for me, and I've had good people pour into me from like, no matter what you're doing, make sure that you, like tomorrow, I'm taking all day off tomorrow. I'm going to Mickey's not so scary Halloween party, dressing up like Prince Charming. My daughter's going to be Cinderella, and my wife's going to be the fairy godmother. So it's like, as long as you're doing those types of things and making sure that your home life and that you've also got the other stuff built in, it's like, okay, then what do I really need to do in order to get this message out? So yes, it's been chaotic though, for me personally, these last 2 years traveling that much.
Yeah, I believe it, man. That sounds like a lot. Well, let's talk about that message. Hopefully, I'm giving you a platform here to share this message without having to fly somewhere. So
Yes, that's why I'm very grateful. You see this, whenever you see this background behind me, like if you're watching this on YouTube or if you're listening to this, like I'm sitting in front of my desk, I've got the bookshelf behind me. If you ever see me like this, I usually have more energy because I'm pumped that I'm home and I get to spread this message. So the message that you're referring to is, man, this is the message in a nutshell. So many people make money but feel broke. Like they're out there hustling, the entrepreneur, they're out there doing the deals, they're getting everything done, but at the end of the day, they're like, this isn't worth it because there's no money. Or their CPA might tell them, oh, you made this much or you lost this much. And they're like, where did all the money go? And what I try to bring out to them is the message of hope. Like, you don't have to stay there. You don't have to stay making money and feeling broke. There's a system to get out of that. And that's where I go and speak about the system. And it's all around the book Profit First. And that's where I try and get that message out as much as possible, because it's not just about the speaking and the traveling. It's about what I've been able to view over the last few years of having this business, and people actually not feeling broke anymore or not going through the same financial struggles that they have their entire business career. Because the number one thing after I speak, the number one question I get is, where were you 10 years ago? Or where were you when I first started this? Because they've never heard anything like this usually before when it comes to their money.
Yeah, I totally understood. And I have to say, I've heard more than a few things like that from the clients that you've worked with, and all the impact that you've had. So let's talk about, so for anybody who has, I mean, I'd be a little surprised if somebody hasn't heard of Profit First yet, but maybe you know better than I do. Maybe
there's lots of people out there. I was in a room
let's talk
2 days ago where there was 200 people, and probably 90% of them had never read the book. So that's why it's like, oh man, you haven't heard of this book? Got to get this message out. So I'll dive into it. If you're listening to this podcast, you've probably read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You've probably, at some point, you've probably read some of the other entrepreneurial books too, like The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, maybe The Richest Man in Babylon. Well, all of those books say some version of pay yourself first, or a portion of all you have is yours to keep, or put first things first. So I will just tell you that Profit First is really built around those statements and that guiding theme of profit first. Like in a for-profit business, we need to put profit first, where a lot of people out there have the formula backwards. They say it's sales minus expenses equals profit, meaning I make a sale, pay everyone else and their mother, and hopefully at the end of the day, I make some profit. They build their business on the hope and pray plan. Well, that's where the Profit First formula says, no, it's sales minus profit equals expenses, meaning I make a sale, I take my profit first off the table and build the business that I want to and the lifestyle that I want to, and then I work the expenses in after that to make sure I still have the business there to support the profit. So that's where a lot of people have heard some version of that, like I said, from those other books, because all those other books are basically that formula. Sales minus profit equals expenses, or pay yourself first, or a portion of all you have is yours to keep. That's where Profit First takes it one step further, and why it resonated with me a lot more than just those statements that I'd heard before. It says, here's an actual system for your finances to make sure you're keeping more of the money that you're making, that you actually can be able to put that formula into your business and make it a reality. It's not just words on a page or something you heard on a podcast. If you look at me, I look like the nerdy numbers guy. So I get it. You feel like, okay, this works for you because you're a nerd. You like the numbers. You like the back end, all that stuff. But my background is real estate investing. I've been a part of over 800 deals in the real estate world. I've done a lot on the single family side. I mean, I've been in it to where we were doing 25 deals a month at our highest point, but spending 26 worth. And it's like, this sucks. Like, it doesn't matter. So I've lived through it, and that's where Profit First showed me the light of where I'd read all those books before. Then I read Profit First, and then I was like, it's not only the mindset that I've heard growing up and all from all these other books, but then in my entrepreneurial journey, it's also this system as well too. And we could dive into that, but that's the overview of Profit First. It's really the pay yourself first formula coming into a system that you can actually put into your business.
Yeah, that's super well explained, David. All right, let's talk about tactically how this works, right? Because I know some people. Let me tell you my experience the first time I heard about Profit First.
Yeah,
maybe I'm
sure.
a unique person, maybe I'm not. I was like, let's see.
I'll let you know.
Let's see. Sales minus expenses equals profit. No, sales minus profit equals expenses. It's the same equation. If, anybody who's done like basic math.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So I think it's like, it's not the math that makes the difference, right? It's the
Exactly.
It's the mindset.
It's the mindset
that makes the difference. But I just, like, to me, it seemed obvious, right? It seemed like this is like the basic path. Yet I think so often we get like caught in these traps where like you kind of know that, what's the best way to say this? So many of the things that you learn that have the biggest impact on your life are things where you look back and you're like, I kind of knew that.
Yes.
But you weren't really fully acting in accordance with it. So let's
Yeah.
talk about some of the things that, like, when people truly understand this and they truly absorb this mindset, or maybe some tactical things that make sure this happen. Like, what do you actually do, like, tangibly different?
Yeah. I'll tell you about the tangible. I want to hit on what you just said, though. That's the other thing. When people actually, when we go through the tactical part, they're like, I've known about this before. Or like, I've heard this from somewhere else, or I feel like I have. Just like what you said. And I love how you said that. Most of the things that make an impact on our life, we feel like we've already known. And it's just being exposed to us or getting us to pay attention to it, usually at a time when you need it. Like, I needed profit first in that real estate business where we were just spinning our wheels, doing a bunch of deals, but not making any money at the end of the day. That's where, with this, the tactical side is, it's real simple. It is very simple. If you've ever heard of the envelope method, then, like, in your personal finances, where you literally grab envelopes, name them different things like groceries or spending money or restaurants and food or whatever, and you put different envelopes, and then you spread your personal finances out to where you have them in the different envelopes. The profit first, the tactical side, the system behind the finances is very similar. So, like, Dave Ramsey's made that popular, whether you love him or hate him. You know, you've also got a lot of that where we've learned that just from different people, or maybe grandparents or parents taught it to you. But that's where, in the business, why I like this system is it's the same core concept of we need to be intentional with every dollar and give every dollar a name. It's naming the dollars, because one of the biggest mistakes most entrepreneurs make is having one big bank account where all the money goes in, all the money goes out, and they have no clarity, and that is how they're running their business. Do we have money? We can spend it. We don't have money? We can't spend it. And the core problem is we think that income or the next deal will solve all of our problems, and yet we get into the point where you scale and grow, but you still have the same bad habits around the money and don't know, and you never get out of that rat race. You have literally built yourself into a rat race. That's why it's very important not to have the black hole account and just have one big account where it all gets sucked in and out again. That's where I want you to set up specific bank accounts that are for the profitability and for you, the benefit of the owner's benefit accounts. The first three, and I'll give you them here on this podcast, because this is something that even if you just did this from this podcast, like, here's why I'm excited to be doing this podcast now, because I've been doing this so long that I've been to other events or other podcasts, and people have just taken this one step and told me it's brought them more financial peace in their business and in their life. So if you could just do this, set up at least one of these three accounts that will make the most impact on you. I call them the golden trio of accounts, just because I'm a big movie nerd. I mean, if you're looking at me, I've got the glasses stuff. Like I said, I lean into that hard. So I love Harry Potter, Star Wars, all that stuff. They've got the three main heroes, right? Luke, Han, Leia. Always making sure the story moves forward and the good guys win in the end. These golden trio are to help you, because you as the business owner are the hero of your journey. It is your Star Wars story. Your real estate company or your entrepreneurial journey is what is going on there. And I want three heroes to make sure that you're winning in the end. So those three to set up is the profit account, an actual physical bank account that's a checking business bank account called profit, another one called owner's comp for owner's compensation or owner's pay. Then there's the owner's tax account. So those three accounts, the golden trio, all for the benefit of the owner, help you keep more of the money you're making and be intentional with your dollars. So those are the three to set up. I always get asked what's the difference between them. We can dive into that if you want to, Brandon, but that's the tactical part. Is now, here's where it becomes the habit. From every deal that closes or every time you get income, you put a little bit of that money towards those three accounts first. And now you've made profit a reality in your business. It is now physical money in a bank account that you can look at on your phone versus some spreadsheet or some profit and loss that some CPA gives you at the end of the year that tells you you made or lost money. And then you're like, where is that money? At the end of the year. That's the big difference in how you can make that a system as an entrepreneur on the back end. But those are the first three accounts I would set up without going into more detail.
Yeah, that's awesome, David. In the spirit of talking about how so many of these things that make a big difference are just things we always knew about that we start to pay attention to, it got me thinking that a way that businesses pay attention to things is not necessarily the owner paying attention to it, but that's
Right.
why roles exist in a business, right?
Yeah.
Like, why do businesses have CFOs?
Yep.
Well, because if you don't, then you run into all these problems, right? And I can almost guarantee you that like 95% of these entrepreneurs or more that you're talking about that feel that way, it's because they don't have a CFO. And what they're feeling, like that feeling is the feeling of not having financial clarity.
Yeah.
So let's talk about like at what point should you have a CFO in your
Yeah.
company? At what point should you be doing it yourself? At what point should you work with some sort of outsourced option?
Yeah. So, and CFO, if you're listening to this, Chief Financial Officer, most people think white collar, big business, like I'll never need a CFO. I'm just a startup, or I never want to get to 10, 20, $100 million and have a full-time CFO. That's where, this is where I created a part-time CFO company, about 4 years ago, because there's a need in the marketplace of people that are too big not to have financial leadership, but too small to need a full-time CFO. So it's like, I want you to have that help. So I would say, if you're just getting started out, you do not need a CFO. Like even a fractional part-time, fractional just means part-time. You do not need a part-time CFO on your team. You need someone there that might be a good bookkeeper, or you do it for the first, maybe up to $200,000 in revenue. Maybe you go to $200,000 and then you start thinking, maybe I need a leader or someone here telling me what's going on. But then whenever you start scaling or growing, whenever you start scaling and growing the business, that's when you're like, okay, do I want to scale profitably? Then I probably want a financial leader on the team. I probably want someone that is there and knowing where is my money going and giving me clarity, helping to implement profit first. But if you're a new business owner, you can start setting this up. If you are making any type of money, starting 200, 300, 400, 500, if you're at seven figures, definitely, that's when to start looking at it, because I view the three financial roles, which one person could take all three of these, or it could be three different people. That's a different question for a different time. But that's where you've got the bookkeeper, CPA, and CFO. And usually, I'll equate it to a hospital. You've got the bookkeeper, like the nurse, coming in every day, just checking on you, making sure everything's okay, getting your charts in order. They're doing the day-to-day, doing the entries. Then you've got the CPA, who's kind of like in his own wing in the hospital, and okay, come see me when you've got the leg to be sawed off or whatever. It's like the CPA does the specialist job of, okay, I just do the taxes, and I'm really here for tax strategy or tax planning or just preparation and filing. Then you've got the CFO, who doesn't work for the hospital. If the hospital, in this case, is the IRS, you've got the bookkeeper and CPA who work for them, and then the CFO is like the private doctor who comes to your house and says, are you healthy or not? Like, we might need to get you on the treadmill. Like maybe this is not just some pills you need to pop, but maybe this is something else that needs to happen, and really helping you get healthy overall. So that way you don't have to take the trips, to the hospital. It's like, how do we do this and guide you? So that's where a CFO comes in as a financial leader. This is honestly what changed my life back in the day of actually having financial clarity. It was reading Profit First and then having someone on the team that acted like a CFO that was like, here, this is where the numbers mean. This is the clarity. This is the projections. Like, if we keep going this route, it's not going to be pretty. It's like helping us get back on the right track financially, because even back then, I did not, as a business owner, which is hilarious, I own a CFO company, but I do not have the accounting background. Like, I have a company now full of people that have those background and credentials, but back then especially, I was just like every other entrepreneur out there, what the heck is going on? So it was having that person on the team who knew what the heck was going on, and I became smarter as a business owner too, and more savvy of how to read the profit and loss, how to read the balance sheet, and how important that is, especially in a real estate investing business. It was like just learning those simple things, plus then implementing a system like Profit First. So I would say if you're in that first stage, of business where you're just getting up and running, Profit First is a great first step that you can start to implement yourself. But then if you need that hand holding while you get bigger, that's where a CFO comes into play to really hold you accountable to that system, because a lot of people who start don't continue the system. I hear that a lot while I'm out and about as well. Like, oh, I started profit first, but then I didn't stay on board with it. So it's like that accountability and help there as well too. So those are just some of the things from observing this over the years and just observing the people that need that type of help too.
Yeah, I've something I realized at every stage of my business as it grows is that all these big companies that have all these roles, you still need all those roles. Somebody has to wear each one of those hats.
Right.
It's just
Yeah.
you're used to kind of it being you and like
You.
the 20 minutes that you had at the end of the day,
100%.
checking your bank account and making sure you have money, right?
Yeah.
That was like the earliest version of the CFO in your company.
Yep.
And then as you
Exactly.
grow, these roles take more life, right? And it gets a lot more complicated. It gets a lot harder. But we forget to look at those things.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a question, and probably different, a different path than a lot of your interviews go. But we love marketing here, right?
Yeah.
That's what we talk about. A lot of people come
too.
to this podcast wanting to learn about marketing. I'm sure you love it too. And I think you'll have a different perspective on this, right?
Yeah.
So people might ask us all the time, what budget should I have for these new digital marketing campaigns that I'm going to launch, right? And then our answers are going to be something along the lines of, well, depending on your market and depending on these factors and how many channels you want to do and all these different things, what kind of revenue you're looking to generate from the campaigns based on X, Y, Z. Maybe you want to be somewhere in this range. That's going to be what can accomplish your goals. But really important is to make sure it's sustainable. Whatever you have putting towards marketing, you want to make sure you've got 6 months of runway there, right? So that's our standard advice, right? Take into account all those factors. So let's just say I'm an investor and you're my CFO. And now I'm asking you, I want to start these new digital marketing campaigns. How much budget should I put into them? What is the path that you would go down to answer that question?
Typically, if we don't already know their numbers and they're facing already a financial mess, we're just going to say 25% off the like right from your real revenue in the profit first terminology. So I'll even give you like a hard answer like that, not the depends of this or that. It's like, let's at least do 25%. Can you get at least a 4x return on your marketing? That's where we start.
Total marketing budget, right?
Total marketing budget. So it's like, this is
I'm doing $1 million a year and I'm
250,
already spending
250
grand. Then now I want to spend another 150 here to get to 25% of top line.
Exactly. If you want to go down that road, and if this is where you can start. But a lot of people we have to walk through first and just see the clarity. Do you have that money to be able to spend on that channel at this point? And what are the returns on your other marketing? Like, because I see this PPC and like that is the best type of lead because they're reaching out to you. So it's like, how fast can we get to that type of thing? Because then you have a more sustainable business. So it's like, how can we build that into the budget? Sometimes we'll even set up a different bank account that's a sub account of like some of the profit first accounts and make it just for marketing. So that way we know this is how much we're able to spend every month and we're not touching the golden trio like I talked about before. So we can still pay ourselves. We can still have a little bit of profit. We're still saving for the taxes so I don't have to worry at tax time. And then here we go. Like, oh, wow, we had more than we thought or we had less. And how do we get to that number? Like, do I need to adjust my percentages? What do I need to do? So we look at it from the cash perspective. I love how you say you want 6 months of runway to keep it sustainable. That's what we're looking at is, okay, how much do we actually have to work with? Because a lot of people we start working with, they're upside down. Like we start going into percentages and it's like 100% OPEX, like to the operational expenses and or above 100% of what they're making. So it's like, we got to get them to where they're stabilized and not feeling the pain of, oh my gosh, I can't even pay myself. How can I do more here? It's like, let's get you to be able to breathe, but we have to budget for marketing every single month because otherwise you are going to go out of business. So unless you plan on stopping and drying up everything, we have to put that there. So we take it from a couple pronged approach. Like if there's no books, here's a percentage that we want you to start with. And then here's where we can divvy it up between the different channels. Then if we can get clarity, like then they start to get clarity and we start to get clarity, we then put whatever is their best ROI. Like how can we get this to be where it's not diminishing returns, but we're still getting the good ROI that we have now. So that way we get more clarity and then we put the money into the marketing account and then start spending the money on the different areas. But a lot of people just don't have clarity around what their money and cash situation is and what the returns on marketing are, which I like. When they work with you, they usually have someone beating them over the head of what, like what are the KPIs and what are the returns, so that way they actually have someone holding them accountable on that side as well too.
Yeah, totally understood. That's a very like sound, logical perspective on things, which I appreciate, which is a lot more than like we're like just throw it on black and see what happens, right?
Right. It's like I usually use if you've ever seen the movie Rain Man with Dustin Hoffman, and he's autistic, and he's really good at playing all the other games like counting cards, doing stuff like that, but then he goes to the roulette wheel and he's like, his brother puts Tom Cruise, his brother puts 3,000 on black because he thinks that his Rain Man's just magic at the casino, and he's like puts 3,000 and loses it. And I say that's exactly what real estate investors do. They think they're good at like getting the deals and everything else inside the casino, but then they go to marketing and then they're just like 3,000 on black, oh shoot, like we just lost $3,000 and they're just throwing something at the wall. So there you go. I mean, I see that all the time in the real estate space for sure.
Yeah, I bet you do. So let's talk about, and I apologize if I'm getting too nitty and gritty here.
Oh, no,
these are my genuine curiosities. Hopefully I speak for at least one person listening to this podcast. How do you balance, especially in a situation like real estate investment where we have a longer cash conversion cycle?
Yeah.
A lot of the time. How do you balance growth and that discipline with the finances, right? Because theoretically that could be a really long time because you have a lot of this like value, like for example, in these properties that you're flipping.
Yeah.
And it exists there. It's on the balance sheet, but it's not really in a bank account. Right? How do you approach that whole equation of cash conversion cycle, and how quickly can you grow?
Well, number one, it's figuring out what their cash. Have they ever figured that out before? How long does it actually take money to hit your bank account? If they have past data, that's what's so great about that. Most people just think, oh, bookkeeping, let's just do the receipts at the end of the year type thing. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and just dump them on the CPA's desk. But if you have past data, that can help for the future of, okay, how does this year compare to last year? Are you doing more or less flips? It looked like last year you were in the middle of 10 projects all the time. How many projects do you have going on now? And here's how last year shook out of like maybe you sold more in the spring and fall when a lot more real estate transactions usually happen. Even back when we were doing it, spring and fall time were a lot heavier. And it's like, okay, well then we know we're going to have to balance our cash during those times too. It's not like we have a ton of cash coming in spring and fall and then we just pour all of it back in the business. No, you might have to spread out over 12 months what you do, where most of the bulk of your income coming in might only come in 3 to 4 months. It might be 2 months in spring, 2 months in fall. And it's like, here's the bulk of your income, but we have to spread that out over the full year. That's why I love Profit First and building it off percentages. What are your percentages for the year? And so that way we know, like, okay, that means when a big flip closes and you've got maybe a 6-figure flip, that does not mean that you pour all that money down, into marketing or to pay yourself that whole thing or whatever. It's like we're going to spread that out intentionally over these other accounts to make sure that, okay, I might not have another 6-figure flip for a few months or any flip. Maybe all the flips don't sell. That's another thing too, right? Even if your cash conversion cycle is there, what if it doesn't close? So it's like building all those factors in. And then what I love about the Profit First framework and having someone who knows finances is how can we even this out as much as possible? And so we're going to take the percentages for the entire year and spread them out over the year. So that way, when you make a lot of money, you still have a lot of money in the accounts when the deals aren't closing. So you're still like, I can still pay my people. I can still pay myself. I can still invest in marketing. So that way I never have to go those peaks and valleys of, hey, we poured a lot into marketing and now we're not, now it's the summer months or it's December. And like, now we can't spend as much on marketing because there's no money in our accounts. It's like, that's another way to curb it for the ups and downs of being able to market or not and advertise. So that's where we help people and we make sure that, especially if you just set up that Profit First system, it helps you to spread that out over the year and think of it in terms of years versus deal to deal. A lot of people just live deal to deal versus saying, okay, where are we for the year, or what do we think is going to happen? If you're new in this space but you're doing a lot of deals and you don't have backward data, That's why percentages are more important for you right now, because you have no idea, no past data, and you're like, okay, if I think I'm going to do 3 deals this year, I need to spread it out over this year. Or like we had one client who did 5 deals, but it was okay for him because he planned for 5 deals, and he said, this has helped me to spread it out over the year, and I can still pay everyone. He had a small team for fix and flips, but it was like I could still pay everyone, pay myself, and not have to rob Peter to pay Paul, rob from my rental company to pay my fix and flip company like he had in the past. So that's one of the things, is knowing what if the cash conversion cycle, if you have it. But if you don't, or you're new, or you're just like, I don't have any data, it's really digging into what percentages do I need for the year to pay myself and to make sure I can pay all marketing and expenses and overhead.
Yeah, totally understood. I love that yearly perspective
Yes.
on it, because I think so many of our clients with like let's call it a rudimentary understanding of some of the principles of profit first.
Yeah.
They think, I just had a really big month. Now I have to spend 25% of what I made on marketing.
Right.
Yet again. And I have to scale my team. And then, a few months later, things crash a little bit, and then you have to lay off half your team.
Right.
And then you have to cut your marketing, and then that creates more instability in the income in the future, right? And it's almost like it just starts getting more and more out of whack, swinging farther and farther both directions, versus knowing like when times are good, you're kind of shoveling some for a rainy day, and when times are bad, like you stick with it, right? You don't.
Exactly.
Like my favorite thing is like, oh no, we had a bad month, we have to cut marketing. That's
right.
like the worst thing you could ever do.
It's the worst thing you could do on the planet. As a business owner, it's like, well, no, we got to figure out what's really working or not. And that's where so many people fly by the seat of their pants. That's where I was back in the day. Like, we didn't know our numbers as well as we should have. We didn't know the returns. So it was like, okay, we were making the decision like everyone else. Let's just and see what sticks. And that's where having that clarity and having a system, that's why I keep falling back to this, because in your business, you're going to fall to the level of your systems. And if you have no system for your money, you will end up losing all of it. You know how I know that? What you just described is most of our calls. I literally had a call last week with a partnership where they were like, this last year, we had some great months up front, but then we just kept spending like it was the great months, and then it started slowing down, and like we had no idea what we were doing, got into a lot of debt, and this year is even better than last year, but we're paying off all the debt we got ourselves into, so we can't even enjoy like the fruits of the labor of this year being a better business and doing more deals. And I'm like knife to the heart, like I've been there, I feel that. Like that's why I try to get this out there, because the systems help you create where in the good times you're storing up the nuts, but then when it's the bad times, you're taking some of those nuts out and saying, okay, we still need to market, we still need to pay our people, I still need to pay myself as an owner, because if I don't, the whole thing goes down if I'm just running around like a chicken with my head cut off type thing. So yes, I 100% agree with that, and it's like I just see this all the time. And that's why I'm so passionate about getting this out, and why I go and travel and speak and do all of that, because there's so many people that they talk about marketing and sales a lot, like as, okay, I'm having an issue, I either need to cut marketing off or I need to ramp it up. But a lot of the reason they hit their head on their pillow and they're not able to sleep is because there's no money in the account. And they're wondering, how do I even pay for marketing? Or how do I pay this person? Or like, how do I hire the person I really need to? That's why I'm like, profit first, and like the financial side is so crucial. If you're going to work hard to get the deals coming in, you need to work just as hard to have a system to catch the money on the back end, so you can keep growing the business and have the business you want and why you started it.
Yeah, totally understood. All right, I'm going to take you through a scenario, if that's okay with you. And it might be one that you're kind of familiar with because you've been there. But just like diving deeper, understanding this on a deeper level, right? Let's just say we took like the very basics, right? I'm doing 20 deals a month.
Yeah.
And I'm finding a way to spend 20 deals a month.
Yeah.
Worth of expenses, right? OpEx equals 100% of revenue, right? Which equals naturally 0% profit.
Yeah.
Cool. So I follow your advice earlier in this, and I say, okay, I need these accounts. I'm going to start setting aside money for tax. I'm going to start setting aside money for owner income and then for profit.
Yep.
Right? All right. I do that. Okay. Now I have even less money theoretically for
Work
your
with.
operation as a
Yeah.
business because it's not working, right? Like the business isn't capable of producing that, right? So how do you tackle this from that standpoint? Obviously, operational expenses need to go down, but how do you know like in what areas they can be decreased? What the best way to do that is without like killing the business in the process?
There's two things whenever we run into that situation that I always give guidance on that help right away and immediately. Number one is if you set up this system, try to do 1% to those accounts, the golden trio of accounts, and say, okay, if you were living at 100% before, can you live off of 97 and just cut 3%? Usually most people, when we go down this road with them, can cut 5 to 10% easily, like on average. Some people are even more, 15 to 20% of just bloat that's inside of their business. So it's like
Then
number
you got a
one.
good margin.
Exactly. Now you've got a good margin. But that's where number one is, can I do at least 1% of these accounts? Can I get a little bit of breathing room? This would be like you're drowning and then only your mouth is sticking out of the water. Like now you can at least breathe a little bit. So that's where we're trying to get to. The second thing is we give them a system and we walk through with a way to cut expenses right away. Because a lot of times if you're doing that amount of deals, it doesn't sound like that more deals is going to solve the problem, because you're spending just as much as you're making. If you were doing 20 deals a month, you were probably at one time doing one deal a month, then maybe 5, then 6, then 7, then 10. So you're in some bad habits. So the first thing I want to do is give you the system of profit first so we can start putting away some money, but then also give you a system to cut expenses. And it's a really simple one, which it's been hilarious, some of the stories I've heard from this, but it is where you take out either one quarter or your past 2 quarters of your bank statements for your business as the owner. This is going to sound like nails on a chalkboard, but I promise you this is more than $1,000 per hour task for you to do. You print those out, and then for every expense in your business for the last 3 to 6 months, you mark them P, R, or U. Is it profitable, replaceable, or unnecessary? So is this something that's bringing me, P would be profitable, which is making me money or saving me a ton of time or headache. That would be your admin people, your finance people, like they're helping me make sure that I'm making enough or keeping enough, or they're taking things off my plate. Salespeople would be like they're making me money type thing, or the marketing channels, like I have to spend money on marketing because it's profitable. I'm getting 4x return or 10x return, on this marketing channel. Like those are the profitable things to look for. Replaceable, or that R, would be like, okay, is there a faster, better, cheaper system, or is there a better person that if I put more into this, I'm going to get more out? Like I go from direct mail to PPC. Like I could spend maybe the same amount of dollars but get a better return for my money. Is that a replaceable expense where you're doing one thing, it's not working so well, and then you put it with something that could turbocharge it? U is very easy. Unnecessary. Usually it's the things that you're just like, how did I keep paying for this thing? What the heck's going on? Whether it's a subscription, a service, sometimes it's hard because it's a person. You're like, they're a great team member, they're a great culture fit, but they don't do anything. They don't push the business forward. That's when it gets tough, is when you have to look at your individuals on the team and do the same exact exercise by yourself in your office or at home. Like, don't do this in front of everyone. But then from here, if you have the expenses that like people are in control of, you just tell them, hey, these are unnecessary. We need to cut these off, cancel all these. And then the replaceable and the profitable ones you usually talk about if you have a leadership type meeting, whether it's you've got a small leadership team and it's you and someone else, or it's just you sitting down and saying, okay, what am I going to do about these expenses? But that's a framework that I also give in the book too. Like this is something that I have literally had people save from anywhere. The average is at $1,000 to $2,000 a month, which is $12,000 to $24,000 in your pocket. At the end of the year, I had our highest ones are 2 clients that we worked with where both of them were able to cut $50,000 within the first quarter, $50,000 a month. Like they were over $100,000 in expenses. Wow. And they looked at their team, they looked at all their processes, they looked at all their systems and CRMs and all the stuff, and they cut $50,000 a month. So those are the craziest stories on both extremes. Like I've got people as small as $1,000 a month when they just listen to this and they do that, but it's still $12,000 in your pocket, or $600,000 a year. Like with the $50,000 a month. But that's a framework where if you're like, I am literally spending as much as I'm making, or I'm bigger than this will literally save you thousands of dollars every month just by sitting down and having a framework to go through that.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Something that someone told me once that I wish I could even remember who it was, but it impacted me. They said, in your personal life, a penny saved is a penny earned. In business, a penny saved is 4 to 5 pennies earned.
That's
Usually.
really good. I
Yeah.
like that. Yes, that is so good because I love it.
Because I think so many investors view it as like, oh, I could save this $10,000, or I could just find that other deal where I'm going to make $10,000.
Right.
But
And
then,
those are not the same thing at all.
no, no. Okay, I have one last question for you.
Yeah, for
Something
sure.
I'm really curious about. Net margins.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk about this in the real estate investment industry.
Yep.
And you know what? I don't believe most of it. Because I don't believe that most people actually know their finances.
Right. Yes.
I
one.
believe it just as much as I believe people talking about their marketing metrics on a
Right.
stage
Yeah.
or in a podcast and stuff. And then I look at the metrics after and I'm like, this is not at all what you talked about. This is like you taking your best month ever and then pretending the whole year goes like that.
Yep.
Or taking your worst month ever and pretending the
Right.
whole year works like that, right? It's not,
Yeah.
it's not evening out and stuff like that. So I would love to hear from you what, for a real estate investment company, what a normal net margin is in your
Yeah.
opinion. And then what's a low net margin? What's a high net margin? And what are really fair reasons that companies fall into either of those segments? Does that make sense? Like
That
the
makes
companies
sense.
that have a great net margin, like what are they doing differently? Like maybe they're doing a lot of flipping instead of wholesaling, or maybe buy and hold. And I don't even know how you work that into the net margins, right? 'Cause
Right.
then
Buy
you
and
add it
hold's
to
a
the balance
different
sheet.
game for sure.
Yes. Anyways, yes, you understand what I'm asking.
Totally understand. And that's where I will say that for the different verticals in real estate, especially the flip versus wholesale can have higher margins. Because if you're just flipping the paper, you usually don't even have to have as many team members. So there's less overhead. The marketing, you are a marketing company, so the bulk of it is going to be your marketing expense. So that is really the bulk of it, and you need to make sure you're maintaining like for the wholesale companies, 25 to 33% on the marketing expense side. Like you need to be high on the higher end of allocating more dollars towards marketing because that's what the wholesale is. But honestly, wholesalers can get 25 to 30% net margins. Like they can. These people that say 40 to 50% or that I hear out there, I'm like, okay, are they talking about like gross and then they're not talking about like, or are they talking about net into their bottom line? But then we start working with them and a lot of them like are at least 25 to 30%. That's the net on the P&L. Then you've got the fix and flip community, which usually is less margin, but they're making more. Usually they can actually make more on a flip, but it takes more to put into it. A healthy margin is 15%. That's what I usually see in the fix and flip world. A very healthy margin in the wholesale, 25 to 30. Very healthy in fix and flip, 15 to 20. Then you've got the low end. You've got people that are 10 and sub on both of those sides, and usually, and even negative percentages, net margins, we see that all the time. I would bet you that if I did a study on that more than 60% come in and they've got a negative margin. They really aren't making anything at the end of the day. The P&L shows a loss. And that's where a lot of people just don't even know that. They're not looking at the numbers. There's nothing there. But that's where I would say if you're anywhere from negative, which is really bad, to 1 to 10, you're in like the danger zone. Especially the 1 to 5%. Like you only have a couple percentage points there before you're just one bad deal away from going under. But that's where those people that do that usually just don't have any clue what their numbers are. I will say the people that have the higher margins usually know the word margin and what it means. Then they know, number two, what the margins really are in the business. Like they know that, okay, this is where I am profiting. It is just, the knowledge is power. Most investors don't know what they make, spend, and keep. Like simple numbers, what's coming in, what's going out, how much am I keeping? And that translates the lack of knowledge into a horrible bottom line. I will also say too, with profit first, we also view profit differently. Because I like the cash profit too. Not just the profit account, but that golden trio. Like, how much did we physically put in bank accounts that did not have to go out the door for any expenses, but they're for the owner? So the owner feels good. Because sometimes those are different numbers because as you know as an owner, Brandon, like if you take a distribution, that might sit on the balance sheet, but it doesn't affect the profit and loss. So it's like we need to look at the actual, what is the savings or what are they keeping from the business in the profit first golden trio of accounts, so we know here's their cash profit And then here's what the profit and loss actually says in the health of the business, and then going in, diving in deeper for the P&L and balance sheet and how those work with each other. But that gives a lot of owners peace of mind too, of knowing here's where I am cash-wise, and then here's where my P&L sits, my profit and loss, and my margins there. But those are the different percentages. I will say the wholesale and the less staff that you need in order to get things accomplished, you can have that higher net margin, where I have seen lots of people do 25, 30% net. Fix and flip, usually 15 is really good, 15 to 20% net margin. And then I see lots of people come in that are 10% or negative, 10% less or negative. But then I also like looking at the cash margins as well too.
Yeah, totally understood. Thank you, David.
Yeah,
thank
for
you
sure.
for all your transparent ideas. It's so cool to get this perspective from somebody that works with how many investment companies do you guys
Right now,
CFO for now?
Yeah, we are over 160 at this point.
Over
this
160.
This has absolutely exploded on me because there's so many people out there make money but feel broke, and they never had access to a financial leader before on their team, and that's what we're trying to do. So yeah, we're working with quite a few people out there in the space.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So it must be a great sample of what exists out there.
Yeah, we've got quite a large sample size.
Yeah. Well, that's super cool. Thank you, David. I don't want to take
Yeah,
too much of your
yeah, for
time
sure.
with all my weird questions. If
Great
somebody
question.
listened to this and they feel like they finally heard like the gospel of David Richter that's going to change their life, please tell me.
How do they
What
get
are the
in?
next steps?
Yeah. So if you go to, I want to make sure that you have two things from this. Get my book, Profit First for Real Estate Investing, which I'm giving to you for free at this link. And I also give a link to the Profit First cheat sheet, the Profit First for Real Estate Investing cheat sheet, where it literally tells you the first steps of getting this started and has links to different resources that I give out that I want you to have no excuse to go out there and not start keeping more money right away. I want you to start keeping a whole lot more. So if you go to simplecfo.com/Bateman, just like Bateman Collective here, and Brandon Bateman's, his last name here. It's Simple CFO. So Simple CFO, like Chief Financial Officer.com/Bateman. You can get my book for free. I'll give you the download. I think we also give the audio version too. And then we also give, here's the step-by-step and a visual overview of Profit First. So if you're like, I love that podcast, but I'd like to see a picture of what's going on with the accounts, I also give you that overview. So it's very much like, okay, I put it in this account and it goes from here to these other ones. But that'll give you a better deep dive into, if you want to, he was saying the gospel of David Richter. It was like, if you just got the cliff notes here today, that goes into like the actual details of the book and like the setting up of the system and any questions you might have. And then the first steps, if you're like, the book sounds great, but I just want to know how to implement this, you get that as well at simplecfo.com/Bateman.
Love it. Thank you, David. You've been so generous with
you.
your time today. And for everybody else listening, I'll see you next week.